right. What's up, everybody? We're live right now with the Painless Wholesaling Podcast. I got my guest on here, Michael McDonald. What's going on, man?
What's up, dude? I'm so excited to be here.
Dude,
Pumped for this.
I'm glad to have you. Now, everybody, if this is your first time tuning into the Painless Wholesaling Podcast, what we do at the Painless Wholesaling Podcast is we invite experts in the industry, real estate investors to come on. We ask them questions about how they got started. We will find out and learn from them so we can learn from their experiences so we don't have the pain of going through the real estate journey and making the mistakes that we can hopefully learn from others to avoid. So, Michael, we're having you on here. We want to learn from your experiences, so we don't feel that hurt. You know what I'm saying?
I feel you, man. I feel you. Sometimes, you don't have to go through that pain if you just learn from the right person, right?
That's right. And before we got on here, we're talking about masterminds and how important those are to avoid the hurt. I mean, it's helped me a ton to level up and avoid big mistakes by learning from other people. And we were talking about we just joined the family, so that's a mastermind, everybody. If you didn't know what that is, but yeah, masterminds are great for avoiding that, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I've invested heavily in education and masterminds to get me to the knowledge I have now today. So,
What do you think, in your opinion, is better? Is it masterminds or like coaching programs specifically about like learning a specific skill set? What do you like more?
I mean, these days I like masterminds because I've got the fundamentals and I
Mm.
know the business. But in the beginning, I would say having the content to actually go through and understand the fundamentals and the ins and outs is probably more important than a mastermind.
Mhm.
Masterminds are gonna give you some cheat codes and maybe some secrets, but it's not necessarily going to show you how to wholesale a house or how to do it without any money or whatever the case. You can have those conversations, but they're not going to be like, here's a course.
Yeah, I think that's the natural progression, right? Where you learn from a mentor or a coaching program, and then once you understand it, you start getting around people who are taking action as well, and you learn cheat codes, like you said, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Sweet. So, yeah, everybody. I mean, we kind of dived right into this, but Michael, give us like a 30-second spiel on who you are, and then we'll dive into your experience. So, yeah, tell us who you are.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I started my home buying company about 5 years ago because I was busted and disgusted working a 9 to 5 job. And I didn't think that there was a path to financial freedom by continuing to do that. So what I ended up finding is a education program. And I learned that you can make money in this business without having a lot of money. What little did I know, I ended up investing about 45,000 on credit cards from a free event that turned into a 3 day, that didn't turn into a one-on-one. And that was my entry into real estate.
What was that with? I'm curious.
It was called, I think it was called Doug Hopkins Real Estate Success Formula, but it was actually he was the face because he's the TV star.
Right.
But it was actually a company called Zurex out
Mhm.
of Utah that's no longer in business. Um,
I know about those guys. Yeah.
Yep. They successfully helped a lot of people raise a lot of money to pay for education. And I was one of them. And so, yeah, $45,000 on credit cards. And my wife, after I came home from that event, told me that she was expecting. And so we had, debt. We had a baby on the way. We had the whole 9 yards. And I was barely making ends meet at my 9 to 5 job. So at that point, I was like, all right, it's go time. I got to figure
Wow.
this out.
That is wild, bro. That is a wild story at the just from there, right? So
Yeah.
how did they get you? Like, how did they get you to drop the 45K? Did they just promise you great things, or how did that go?
Yeah, I mean, they sell you on the dream. There's no question about that. And you're there. There's a little bit of high pressure sales tactics. There's the FOMO situation where you're in the back of the room, call your credit card company, see if you can get an increase on here to be able to put this on credit. You can do 0% interest, 12 months,
Mhm.
and you'll go make hundreds of thousands of dollars and, you'll pay that off no problem. Like, it's not a big deal. Obviously, there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's what they do is they just tell you, hey, you need this coaching, and if you don't, like, we don't know if you're going to be successful. And that was enough for me to say, you know what, I'm going to make a call and I'm going to make this commitment. And this is my education
Mhm.
in my real estate journey because I knew nothing about real estate prior to this.
Does that fire you up a little bit that they got you like that, or are you cool with it?
I mean, I definitely made an emotional decision.
Mhm.
So looking back, it was not the smartest thing I've ever done,
Mhm.
but I'm not angry.
Yeah.
I'm thankful because I got some pretty good lines of credit by
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
that I still have today. My credit tanked
Mhm.
after that because I had 45 on the 60 line. But yeah, no hard feelings at all. Just knew I needed to figure it out, and it was
Yeah.
on me to make that happen. I looked in the mirror and realized it's go time. I got to figure this out.
You know what's interesting about that? Because I think because I coach, right? So I sometimes I think like there's the guys that charge like the 20, the fortune builders, the same product I feel like that I could provide, right, for a lot less. But it's almost like that freaking giant charge gets people to take action because if they don't, they're in trouble. Which I don't know if I think that's like the best business model. Be like, okay, I'm gonna force them in a terrible a sticky situation by charging them a lot. But it does get people to take action, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said about it. 45. I mean, that's a lot for for what I received, but
Right, right.
there's definitely something about you pay attention when you pay.
Mhm.
And so, not saying to go spend 20,000 or 45,000 on credit that
Of
money that you
course.
don't even know how you're going to pay back because this business takes some time,
It does, yeah.
and it took me time to figure this out.
It really does. I totally get that. So, okay, so that's how you got your journey. So I want to ask you for the people that are watching this or will watch this, how did you get deals or what's an experience that you've gotten to deal with no marketing spend? Because we all know you can spend money to get marketing, but I want for the new beginners, how can they go out and make money, without any money?
This is an amazing question. I mean, you got to be resourceful in the beginning. I didn't have 45 to actually spend on marketing, so I had
Yeah.
45 to tell them to tell me what to do, and I listened. And so my first deal came from a for sale by owner. It was on a fourplex,
Yes.
happened to be listed by a tired landlord that had actually lived in one of the four units for several years. Called it up, said, "Hey, see your property for sale. Tell me about it," and set an appointment and went there. And I actually only negotiated off $5,000 off
Wow.
of his ask price. So he was under asking because the property needed work. And that was how I got my first deal. Contracted it. I posted it on the real estate investor group. My inbox blew up and I ended up taking an offer, contracted for 180, took an offer for 211 on
Oof.
that fourplex.
Nice.
And I paid an agent and it was nothing but a disaster until closing because there were so many moving parts.
Ugh.
Had no idea.
Dude, isn't it crazy how those first deals like are I always feel like the first deals get crazy, My first deal was crazy too.
I think this question is going to come up, but I have to share this because people are going to laugh when they hear this.
Mhm.
I'm standing with the landlord who thinks I'm buying it for cash and just bringing in my partner, right? Little does he know, with 15 people showed up to the inspection.
Yes.
After we accepted the offer, the person said they were cash, but they actually had a line of credit that they had to get an appraisal for. The appraiser shows up to the property. I'm there with the owner. The appraiser is right here. I'm here. The owner's here. He says, "Man, I'm having a hard time with this. Can you help me understand why is the purchase price 180 and this price over here is 211?" And my heart just dropped.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And the seller looks at me and, like, he's like, basically like, "Why is that?"
Yeah.
And I'm just like, "Well, we're selling it to my investor friend, over here, and he's paying 211." Like,
Yeah.
that's it.
I gotta
I
hit
couldn't
you
lie,
straight.
like, it was
Yeah.
just the truth, and he's like, "Man, I really left some money on the table on this one."
Man, that's crazy. And the thing is, like, that's all we're doing. We just know someone that will pay a little bit more, right? There's nothing you said it straight. You're like, hey, that's what I did. Is there anything wrong with that? No, you
No?
know, no, not at all. That's what
Yeah.
we do. And it's interesting because like the guy was paying for and when we buy properties from people, right, or wholesale 'em, they're paying for the convenience, speed, and ease, right? So we were able to get it done quick. So he accepted your offer. That's just how it goes, right?
Yeah, and that the moment that I cashed that check, man, is the moment that I realized that there was some real money to be made in this business. And I got pretty excited because I was a nutritionist when I was doing that. And I think I was making 35,000 a year.
Oh
And that
man,
check was up more than half of my entire year's salary.
dude. And then you just got stoked about that, huh? You were like, oh my.
The belief was just like, all right, this is real. Like, I can do this more, like, again and again and again, no problem.
Did anyone walk you through that deal, or did you just were you able to get it done, figure it out all yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, paid the Xerox company,
Mhm.
whatever I paid them on credit, and then I found a guy who actually was local, and he was mentoring people, and his deal was we split the deal 50-50.
Mm,
And
mhm.
so he showed me a handful of deals, that I ended up splitting 50-50 with him, and worth every bit of it because there were situations that came up where I'm like, I don't know what to do. I've never done this before. So he's like, here's what I would do. And, we figured it out.
Dang, there's something to be said for those local guys that help out those new guys. They're like, "Yeah, I'll take 50," but it works. It helps.
I'd do it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's invaluable for sure.
Exactly, and that's kinda how I help people in my program too, is like, look, I just did a deal with, one of the people in my club, right? It's like a month-to-month inexpensive, program that I help people out with. We give them 60/40, they take 60, I take 40. So we had a deal, he brought it to me, the house was, listed for sale by owner for 320. He got it at 275, and, I went out to see what buyers would pay, and they were at, 200, right? So
Woo!
$75,000 above where buyers wanna be.
Phew.
So I said, "Dude," I didn't think much of it. I was like, "Dude, you gotta negotiate this. I got a buyer at 200, get it below 200, offer 160, and, we might end up at, like, 180." He's like, "Okay." So he comes back, he's like, "All right, I got him, 180." And
Unbelievable.
I'm like, "Really? Okay." So signed it, everything was good. It was actually 181, right? So 19,000.
Yeah.
And, I was like, "Man, why did they take that?" And it was probably just because they were on market for a long time. No one was biting. They overlisted it, so they just took it. And it ended up happening that the deal, it was they inherited the home from their dad. So we were going through the title, everything was ready, and then we find out that dad that they inherited the property from had a $3 million judgment on him, and we're like, dude, this deal's dead. But we were able, because I was able to work with them and go through some attorney stuff. We were able to get it taken care of. Where we found out that in 2016 it was wiped out in the bankruptcy. But before, like if you're new, you probably would have just left it alone, right? You'd be like, I don't
Yeah.
do. But we were able to get rid of it. Check this out. So the buyer, everything's ready to go. Everybody signs. My buyer in South Carolina wires the money, and somebody from the title company that they were working, like they were wiring the money to, someone had hacked the title company's email system and put the wrong wiring instruction information. So they wired $200,000 to an account that no one who knows, right? So I was like, hey, so I call them. I'm like, hey, how come this deal hasn't closed yet? They're like, dude, we wired our money to some fraudulent person that hacked the account. So I'm like, you guys just lost 200K, and the buyer's like, yeah. He was actually pretty cool about it. He's like, yeah, I guess.
He
I mean,
never got it back?
for as far as I know, for this point, he hasn't gotten his money back. So at that point, so we had the $3 million lien. The buyer wired the money to the wrong person, right? The fraudulent. And I was like, this deal's dead, bro. It's now the guy just lost 200,000. He's not gonna want to buy it. So I said, look, buyer, it's cool if you don't want to buy it, bro. You just lost 200K. I'm not upset. He's like, no, we want it. So then they're like, give us another week. So then we got it done. But like that kind of crap happens. And if you're new, you're like, you're probably done, right? You're just like, I'm out. Like, I don't even know what's going on right now. So it's
Yeah.
true. Like helping people and having that experience can really help get stuff across the finish line.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no question about that. I mean, it makes a big difference having that person on your side.
So next question I want to get into is, I want to know, tell me a crazy story that you have from doing business. I kind of told you one, right? But
Yeah.
without even meaning to, tell me something crazy that you've had, because I know you've done quite a few deals. I know there's something, a seller went wild or something happened. You got
I have to share this one because it made me say that I'm never gonna do another deal like this ever again, and I'm potentially in the middle of doing another deal like this.
do
So it
do
may
it.
just the reminder of this story could make me change my mind and tell the seller I'm not gonna even move forward on this purchase. So
Let's hear it.
it's a mobile home, okay? And this situation is bizarre. We started marketing in a new market and we got a lead from a mobile home. And the lady had lived like already moved and everything. It was a for sale by owner. We ended up because I don't know what you guys know about mobile homes, but it's not like a house. It's a bill of sale.
Right.
So it's basically just like a piece of paper. And like I didn't know if you could assign those or what. But long story short, we contracted for 20 and we just listed it. Like we listed it on Zillow, and we're just vetting people, seeing if we'd find a buyer. Well, we found a buyer, and this lady lived in like 2 states over,
Oh,
and she was only willing to pay like 2,000 above what we had it for. So like we're like nobody else is interested. I contacted one of my buddies in that market. He owned a business. We
mhm.
facilitated a closing. He facilitated a closing at his business, and we trusted them to change like the title and to not take the extra $2,000 of the difference and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And You can only imagine, dude, the amount of logistics that go into that.
My mind can't really comprehend what's going on. That sounds like a lot.
It was a disaster, and so, long story short, it was just a train wreck of a situation. We should have never done it, and, like, learned a lot from that, but we're like, "We've never wholesaled a mobile home before, but we're gonna try it," and so, long story short, the seller got a check for 20, we got a check for 2, and that was it, and, like, we closed that deal, but it was just a complete nightmare, and I have a mobile home, that was referred to me today, and this lady's like, "I just wanna be done with it." Like,
Mhm,
whatever, and so, when they get teed up, and I've actually been given a mobile home before,
mhm.
but, yeah, I don't typically deal with mobile homes for that reason, man. It's
Do
just not as clean.
do you feel like, in my experience, I feel like the ones where the smallest fees are the most amount of work. Do you is that true for you?
Every time, yeah,
Yeah, because you gotta, like,
100%.
wiggle. You almost have to, like, wiggle and, like, I don't know,
You
make
gotta you
things
gotta
happen.
renegotiate the seller, you gotta work up the buyer. The buyer's extra picky because he doesn't wanna pay that, you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, they're always way more work.
Dang. So tell me a little. I've never done a mobile home deal, so it sounds like it's like a car, isn't it? Like, you have to, like, go to the DMV or something weird like that? I don't
Yeah,
know
you
much
you you
about it.
do a bill of sale, and then there's a title transfer component to it, and you can wholesale them, but it's just a little bit more complex because a portion of the money goes to the seller, and then they basically have to cut a check for the difference, so I don't recommend it, man. I mean, I'm prepared to buy them for really cheap and then just be the bank for somebody else,
Well,
sell it
yeah,
on owner
that's yeah,
finance.
that seems to be, like, the play that a lot of people do in mobile homes. Did you, was it in a park where there was, like, a lot rent, like, a lot fee where you had to, like, because it was in there?
Yeah, it was, and that was another component is we had to actually apply as the
Right.
person to live there,
Yeah.
and then we had to get their approval with the sublease, and I just got off the phone with this other lead that I was telling you about that they don't even allow subleasing anymore. So, you just gotta kinda know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, that's another thing that I haven't dealt with, personally because I haven't done a deal, but I know that's like, okay, that the park is a component too. You gotta, like, verify if they're cool with everything, so
I'd be a lot more interested in buying the park
yeah,
and renting
no,
the land.
yeah, sounds like a good gig. I know a lot of people get into that and they do well, so wow. Cool, man. Well, I like that story. So, kinda let us the listeners that, are listening and that will listen, let us know what you're up to right now and what we can learn from what you're doing right now.
Sure, absolutely. So we've had a lot of talks on kind of the back end of everything of how our business looks today.
Mhm,
And so I'll kind of just fill in little bit about how I got here. I think that's important to provide some value for the listeners if
for
they
sure.
want to grow a team. One thing that I realized early on is that if you're going to spend money on marketing, you absolutely must track and know where every dollar is, but you also need to be able to respectfully handle that flow of leads. Otherwise, you're going to just be burning dollars. And
Right.
so early on, I realized that, and my goal was to build up a company that could operate if even I'm not the one who's making the calls. And so that's what I ended up creating. I brought on an acquisition manager, I brought on a lead manager, and slowly but surely just started bringing in the people, transaction coordinator, and so on and so forth. And what I learned along that is if you don't have a good process, you're just going to set them up for failure. And
Mhm,
so simultaneously, we started really documenting the process for each department, right? You have your acquisitions department, you have your dispositions department, you have your transaction team, finance, and all that stuff. We just processed it out and give them the tools and the resources that they need to be able to take a transaction from start to finish successfully without me having to be involved with every aspect of it.
right.
So, wanted to preface it with that because today we have 10 full-time employees. We have some contractors and stuff like that too in the States. And then we have a handful of virtual assistants as well. And ultimately, it's not for everybody. We were talking, our overhead has gotten up there, but it's exciting to be able to watch an acquisition squad, compete and go for deals and get after it. And so today, yeah, we did 93 deals last year. We're pacing to double that next
Wow,
year.
that's
That's our
amazing.
goal. But I'm more interested in the bottom line. So if we don't even get close to 200, that's fine. If we can do bigger deals and less of them, that's a lot more less brain damage,
Yeah, right.
right, for our team. Because inevitably, even if you have the best transaction coordinator in the world, you have the best acquisition disposition. There are just some things that as an owner, you have to kind of step in and get involved with to help solve those problems. And so That's just the nature of the beast. That's
Yeah,
what we do.
for sure. And what markets are you currently doing deals in?
So I'm in Vegas. Vegas is a market that we're building up right now, starting to do more and more deals here. And then
Mhm.
Nebraska. Just for the listeners, I actually don't live in my main market where I do business, hence the virtual baller, right?
Mm,
I
that's
I
right.
moved from Nebraska three and a half years ago, and kept building the business up, and my business partner's back there still. But yeah, teams all over the country. I have an acquisition manager here in Vegas. I have an acquisition manager in Omaha, one in Arizona, and then follow-up specialists as well. But we just spend the money on the marketing. The leads come in, and they know what to do. And as long as they're performing, we can consistently close those deals.
I have a question about KPIs. Do you have like a certain amount of calls that they have to hit, or what is that main KPI that they have to hit like daily for your
Yeah,
acquisition
so
staff?
yeah, I mean, the calls, we have a 50 minimum is one thing that we track, but I'm not as worried about that because there are days where as long as their talk time's up and as long as they're having quality conversations and making offers, like if they meet a certain threshold of amount of processes and amount of offers, naturally their call time's going to go down. So for
Mhm,
example, I think my acquisition manager has contracted 2 houses yesterday, and I think it's either one or two today
mhm.
already. So it's been a good week, but his talk time and call numbers are going to be a little bit down because he's been talking to hotter leads and spending more time with those people because it just takes more time.
Gotcha. So it fluctuates between offers, talk time, and calls. Like if they don't
Yep.
have offers, they need calls. If they don't have calls, then they need good talk time.
Yeah, and it's probably not as clear as it should be, but what I'm most concerned about, and anybody who probably manages a sales team can tell you this, is what's on the board, what's the projected profit. So we're always looking at that, like the projected profit. You have a minimum expectation that you need to hit, and then you have a goal, obviously, that you're striving for. So that's what's more important to me.
No, totally get that. Did you ever try to do the virtual like PPC in every state, nationwide model, or did you always stick with your markets?
I've always stuck with some core markets because I don't know. I just felt like you know how the disposition is. If you don't have a
It's a
network,
nightmare.
or
It's a
it's
night.
it's it's a
It's
it's
a
it's the
nightmare,
opposite of
bro.
painless, man. It's
Yeah.
painful.
Dude,
Uh,
that's right. That's exactly right. The PPC model of nationwide. Oh gosh, that's a dispo nightmare.
Dispo nightmare is the truth, and so we've picked a select core markets that we have contacts with and boots on the ground in case we ever needed to have somebody run out there. But we've also learned how to set the stage, and I can kind of talk a little bit about that because I think setting the stage and expectation with the seller on a virtual deal is critical.
Yeah,
Like
talk about that. Tell us
it's
about it.
everything. So when you're talking to a seller, they need to know what to expect. And so, for example, when we have a process call and an offer call, they already know that even if they accept the offer, we're going to have an inspection period. And there's a possibility that if everything doesn't check out as we talked about and we get bids that are lower than what the contract price is, because maybe we paid a little bit more than we wanted to, we're going to have a conversation about that. And they're not obligated to entertain anything less than what we agreed upon. But once we get that feedback, that is a possibility. And by the way, we're going to have people coming in and out of the house during this time period to be able to make this happen. So you lay it all out there.
Easy, easy. And that's exactly how transparency is the key, right? You got to set the stage. There's nothing worse than like that feeling that you had at the when you did your first deal, right? You weren't open about it, so he asked you, right? But now you don't have that problem because you said, "Hey, this is exactly what we're doing. We're working with some partners in the area. We're going to have some people walk through the price. If everything works out, we're going to go through exactly what we said. If I see something that we didn't talk about, then we're going to have a discussion, right? It's
Yeah,
easy."
and there's no surprises. You can just tell them, "Hey, you know what? This is really tight. Like, I don't really love this number. If I come back to you in a week or 2 weeks, and say that this is probably not going to work for us, are you going to be able to live with that? Like, don't go moving your life until we can get this inspection period taken care of."
Right. And
Um,
that's my mission, right? Working with new investors because I'd say 90% of them don't know how to have that conversation. They're nervous about it. They don't know how to be straight up. So they'll tell a seller, "Yeah, I'll buy your house." at a price they have no idea if it works and they don't have buyers, and they will avoid the call to renegotiate until their cancellation date or the close date for some reason, and the person's already moved out. Those are the ones that are giving us a bad name because they just don't know what to do, right? So
Yeah, man.
crazy.
Definitely never want to put a seller in that kind of a situation. And people think that it's such a hard, scary conversation to have, but people appreciate the transparency. They're like, man, this guy's being like almost too transparent. Like I really trust him. I really respect him.
Yeah, 100%. Well, dude, I love the way you're doing business. I think that's awesome. One thing that I struggle with a lot when I was had my wholesaling business, kind of like yours was bigger, was doing the multiple markets. That was a tough thing. But we were following the model that at the time it seemed like the sexy model, right? Like because the pay-per-click leads, they were cheap if you diversify your area. But the problem is, again, it's dispo. So we got investor lift thinking that would solve. There's nothing that's going to solve you getting a house in a crappy area. That's just there's nothing that solves that. You can't sell a property unless it's in an area that has investors, that is hot.
Absolutely.
So
Well, let me say something about areas without investors because that was actually my belief as well for the most part. And if you tried putting it out on an investor lift property to a town in the middle of nowhere, nobody is using investor lift in a town in the middle of nowhere. And
that's
if
right.
they are, it's kind of just a fluke deal. We had a deal that we could not wholesale, but we like had it at such a good discount. It was an acreage. It's like a 90K purchase, 250 ARV. Like it was a home run deal. And we're like, why is nobody biting on this at like 130? Like we were prepared to just like, sell it for like way haircut of a price and just move it. And it was crickets. Like nobody couldn't get a hold of anybody. I'm like, what if we could put this property on the MLS? What if we could get this thing out to more buyers? And so we just had to have a conversation with the owner and just say, hey, listen, like we want to move forward at the price that we've agreed on. In fact, we might be able to get you even a little bit more, but we're going to need two things. We're going to need access and the ability to put it on the open market. If we can do those two things, Mr. Seller, we're going to list the property, we're going to sell it, we're going to get you squared away. But that's what we needed to have happen. And sure enough, they're like, cool. We're going to go ahead and just novate this deal. For anybody who's listening who doesn't know what that means, we're
Hmm.
basically canceling our contract once we find a new buyer and then replacing it and getting paid the spread in between. Dude, we listed that thing within a week. We had an offer for 169,000.
Beautiful, beautiful.
It was nuts.
No, no, I agree. I agree. I think novations are like the key right now, right? Especially like in this market. Do you do a lot of them right now, or do you not do so many? So many.
Yeah, that's a good question. Since the laws are changing in some states, Nebraska being one of them, it's kind of becoming our go-to strategy. We're just letting the seller know, hey, if this is not a house that qualifies for our cash program, or maybe the price is just too far off, we do have a program for this. And in return, this is what we're going to need access. Again, we have them sign an attorney in fact, and we list the
Mhm.
property. And it's been a game changer because dispositions don't need a dispositions manager. The agent takes
That's
care of
right.
all of it, and we get a buyer who's willing to pay us more money.
When you say the laws are changing in Nebraska, are you talking about wholesaling?
You got to have a license to wholesale in Nebraska. Yep.
Right. Would you say doing innovation is some form of wholesaling or not? Not at all. It's totally different, right?
I mean, if you ask the real estate commission, they would probably make a pretty good argument about how it's basically the same thing. You're marketing a contract, but if it's not you marketing the contract, it's and you have the seller's permission, they've signed all the disclosures, all the documentation, then I would argue that it's pretty much like a wholesale without buying it. So
Do you feel like that's like the up and coming thing now? Like it will probably take over wholesaling novations?
yeah, I mean, I do. I think in a year and a half, 2 years from now, there's going to be some serious legislation depending on how many people find out about it and don't do it correctly. Because you could also put somebody in a bad situation or mislead somebody if you're not very transparent on the whole novation thing too.
Yeah. I think so. My process when I talk to sellers right now is low ball offer, like low wholesale offer. They don't
Hmm.
accept, then it's like, oh, I get why you wouldn't accept that. And then there's two other options. It's creative or we can partner, right? We have a program for partnering with you. Is that kind of how you roll, or do you just go straight to the novation route?
No, we're always proposing the cash offer program first.
Okay.
Unless it's just so far off that you're like, this isn't somebody. I would rather just not offend them because it's too low. We just say, hey, your house might qualify for this other program we have, and here's why we would do that, and here's what it would entail. and we would just present that program essentially. And there has to be some sort of a FOMO. Like, let's be real here. If
Hmm.
everybody gets this program, it's not as cool as if only this house, because of the age and the fact that it's not completely distressed, gets the program. It changes the psychology behind it. It's like, oh man, nobody's been approved for this program in like a week. You
That's
know,
right.
this is
Yeah.
the first one of the last 20 that we've done here that's been approved for this. And they're like, this is pretty special, you
Yeah,
know?
I feel good about this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the best way to do it, to present options to the seller, see what works best for them. And I really believe that the amount of people that are can accept a wholesale offer or will is very, very low. So you got to be able to work creative innovations in there, or you're gonna not do as many deals.
Especially in this market, man.
Yeah.
We've been forced to pivot because there was just too much of a gap between the pricing expectation and the reality of what the cash buyers were paying.
Hmm.
We're cash buyers. We close on properties all the time, only in our core markets.
Yeah.
But if you don't have to, you can definitely alleviate a lot of risk by having that other program. So we do creative as well, and we actually send a letter of intent, like offer options packet, to the sellers with
Was
those options.
Does it have those three: cash, creative, and the partnership one?
Yeah, and it has another program which is basically just a realtor referral.
Mm.
And it sounds weird. It's like, well, people ask all the time, why wouldn't they just list themselves? And it's because we're taking care of everything for them.
Yeah.
If the buyer's asking for repairs, we're taking care of that, and it's hands off.
Yeah, and most of the time you just add it to the disclosure, right? Like you don't even have to fix it up. You can just say, "Hey, we'll give you that credit on innovation." Is that right?
Yep, it's just basically a net price to them, and we'll take care of the rest.
Dude, can you send me that letter of intent? That sounds pretty interesting. I have one too.
Yeah,
I would like to see the way yours is set up.
sure, absolutely.
Well, I love it, man. I love what you're doing, and I'm kind of doing what you're doing, but on a very smaller scale with specific. I kind of told you my model, right? I want to help specific people that are newer to the game. But that's awesome. Everybody that's listening, this is exactly if you want to go that route and build a bigger team. That's exactly how you do it. You got to get people in place so you can step out. And yeah, you're doing it right. I like what you're doing, Michael. I appreciate you giving us a lot of your experience of how you're doing things.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Happy to
Cool.
help for sure.
Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
I mean, if you want to connect with me, you can do so on Instagram.
Of course. Yeah, drop anywhere where people can hit you up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll drop a link to my Instagram. It's Michael McDonald REI on Instagram, and then yeah, I mean, have some free tools and resources on my website.
What's your website?
It's the virtualmillionaires.com.
Virtual Millionaires. That's a good name too, man. I'm glad you got that domain.
Yeah, thank you. I almost had to fight somebody for it. No, I'm just kidding.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so you got virtual millionaires, you said .com, and then you have Michael REI on Instagram.
Yep, exactly. And I do have I can give your audience, if they want a little bit of it's an acquisitions accelerator,
Yeah.
is what it's called. I can drop a link for anybody who's interested in that, if you're cool with that.
100%. Yes, please. Anything we can do. I mean, you're providing a tons of value to me by being on here. Let me ask my questions, and then you're providing a ton of value to the audience. So yeah, appreciate it. And you do have your own show too, right? Your own podcast.
I do, yeah. So behind me is the Virtual Millionaire show, and it's essentially, yeah, that's what we talk about. Is we talk all about growing a team, and I'm really big into marketing as well. I know it's not for everybody to spend a lot on marketing, but I definitely have. I've spent a lot of money on marketing over the years. I don't know. I don't even want to know how much. It's probably been well south of a half a million easily.
For
So
sure, yeah. But yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And I believe that marketing is necessary if you want to scale. You're not scaling without marketing, in my opinion. You need marketing. But if you're new, dabble a little bit in the free realm, try to network, try to get deals from going to RIAs. There's a lot of different ways. But as you get the proof of concept, you see that this works, which it does you can see from us, then you can start diving into picking whatever marketing channel you want. And Michael's a good person to reach out about that.
amazing.
All right, brother. Baller, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. And we
Can't
will
wait
catch
to
you.
connect in Florida, man.
Oh, we'll
The
connect,
family.
man. It'll be good. All right. It was good talking with you. We'll catch you later. All right.
All right, sounds good, brother. Take care.
Peace.